Hey, this is Jefferson again. Thanks so much for joining my podcast again. It's awesome. Today I've got a very special guest, Anthony. He's just an incredible person. I've been talking to him now for I think a couple of weeks, and he and I had just connected like you cannot believe. I think if you're gonna, I learned something very just to share, just to start off with. I learned that you have to talk to investors like early on, like even before day one. Talk to investors. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. That was like the first bit of advice I got from Anthony. And so here it is. Anthony, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, yeah. So my life has been a whirlwind. I grew up on a farm in California, about an hour and a half east of San Francisco. Grew up very Republican, grew up in a very religion dominated environment. Decided around 16 that I wanted to just get out here. And so I started ditching school coming out to San Francisco. Probably ditched a good half of my high school and then found my way over here to San Francisco and in a relationship at 18 as soon as I graduated with honors. Fell into the PayPal mafia. I was working for a guy named Keith, wonderful guy, extremely bright. He's now over at Founders Fund as a managing partner. I was handling menial tasks for him as well as just helping him generally with his investments. He was a super angel at the time, and he continues to strive for excellence. Through doing so, though, I learned everything about investing and Silicon Valley from the ground up, and it's been a wonderful experience. I can say like completely that it's very, very dynamic, quick moving, and if you don't keep your finger on the pulse, you get lost. So like working for these people, you learn quite a few things about working with investors, working with founders, and I then embellish upon their own networks to form my own across Silicon Valley, New York, and London. In the last 15 years, I've been helping tech founders raise capital. Been doing so through diving down listed lists, connecting with the investors that would be most relevant and aligned by virtue of connecting with the people that are most passionate about the things that they're working with. For example, Keith is a fitness geek. If he could invest in Tonal on day one, he absolutely would. And so I pair investors with the passions they are pretty much crazy about and can't get enough of. Through doing so, like you'll learn that Peter Thiel is all about economic markets. If you can find a 2 or 3 sided marketplace that changes economic markets as a whole globally, you'll be a winner in his book. And you might actually be able to get qualified for a founders fund seed investment.
I
Yeah.
just had one question. So, I mean, you're mentioning, so these investors, have you worked with, like after the farm and everything, you started working with investors in the very beginning
Yeah.
or founders?
I
How'd that work?
yeah, flying around Keith was a really interesting experience. I was quietly the one handling some of the signatures on some of the angel paperwork, including Airbnb. Meeting some of these founders and the investors that surround them was pivotal to me growing up and me refining the way that I work. When you work with these people or you're bouncing deals across desks, they demand excellence, they demand analytical thinking, and they will ask the whys and ask all of the really interesting things that make these companies tick to me. And so I had to like dive in deep to every one of these companies, be able to talk like an expert as if I had that expertise for 10, 15 years or for 5 or 10 years like those founders did, and really sell it to them that this is something that's correct. This is something that the world needs. And they've thought through all the hard problems. This includes distribution, this includes marketing, this includes all of the little cogs in the machine that present a well-reasoned investment. And like just using that analysis and doing it over and over and over, you start seeing the patterns. So I've helped companies that have recently exited for 550 million. I've helped companies that have exited to Goldman Sachs. Really interesting bodies of work that I can't take any credit for, but being the conduit and being the connector between the two worlds, it's opened up a world of advantage and opportunity for me, because anytime you connect two individuals, as long as they're aligned and relevant, they then will credit you for that connection. And so I highly advise any entrepreneur that's working in any space to go out and just pay attention. Pay attention to your network, pay attention to your friends, pay attention to any which way you can provide any sort of input that's relevant, any kind of critique, because the more people that provide that critique, will be the more people that provide for another Theranos not to happen. And if you ask that hard question of like, what is your distribution and how are you going to get there? What is the road to IPO? Like, are you thinking critically about this? Like, that looks like it's a bottleneck given that that company is doing it too. Like, the more hard questions you ask, the more you put yourself out there, the more received you'll be as a whole, and the more that you'll be recognized as an expert. Because generally, like, when you're putting together two titans of industry or two titans of industry that may become that in 10 years, you're generally trying to learn as much as you can about the business, as much as you can about the market before you actually make those connections. And once you make those connections, it really provides for this acceleration of innovation that even YC can't provide. YC is YC because of the network that it represents. College is college because the network that it represents. Is all network, all businesses is people. And all you can do is strive for excellence, show integrity. And as long as you have that, you can connect to anybody. As long as you make sure that the people that you're talking to is relevant for them and it's something that they want to bite into. And if you ask for help, ask for advice, you'll be able to get the world from that as long as you show that integrity.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, just curious, I mean, have you worked with hundreds of companies, or I mean, just how many companies have you worked with?
Probably 50 to 70. Like,
Wow.
yeah, it's like doing these introductions, like you're like, oh yeah, like this is perfect for that VC. This is perfect for that high net worth individual that's acting as an angel to these other companies. Like, if you are somebody who I have, like, a person I've come across recently through an introduction that was made to me was Esther. And Esther is a legendary name in Silicon Valley. She sat on the board of 23andMe. When it came time to bouncing a couple companies off of her, what's relevant to her is changing the world for the better, furthering medicine, and furthering what we think of would be great care and great care for us to provide for longevity. And if you can find the companies that she hasn't seen, bounce it to her, you become an expert in that domain, and you become somebody who not only can provide deal flow, but somebody who she wants to be around. And so
I
I've
see.
been extremely grateful, and I give gratitude every day for the whirlwind of an adventure that I've led.
That's awesome. So, along the same lines, I mean, I know some investors, they spend a lot of time trying to figure out their pitch deck and a lot of the other kind of essentials, and they send a couple of emails out to investors and they don't hear anything back. What advice would you give to the young entrepreneur that's just starting out?
Yeah, so it's all about the warm introduction. Um, so this actually leads into kind of what I'm doing these days. What I'm doing these days is a company called Relatus, and it's, you can find us at relatus.com. We provide those warm introductions. We do the research for you. You no longer have to dive across Crunchbase to PitchBook to, I don't know, everything from Wikipedia to uh, making sure that you have like all of the homework done for yourself. We'll actually do that homework for you. We'll look within your network for the best people possible to get you there in terms of investors, advisors, even candidates, and we'll get you the data on how to close those people that are in your network. And then we'll find the most relevant and aligned people outside your network based on if they're high net worth, if they're family office, if they're VC, if they're whatever. And we'll get you the 2 or 3 people within your network that will get you there to those baller investors that are the right people that will invest in your moonshot idea. But yeah, it does start with materials. Materials is everything. Have as many people as you can who are smarter than you look at your pitch documents. Have them look at your get that executive summary to be as direct and as precise as possible with the least amount of words. Bullet pointed up. Make sure that you're making it easy to read and easy to understand, but also consider that, like, even a warm introduction to an investor, you're only going to get 30 seconds of your time. So make that first hook, that first sentence, something that they really want to like clamor to, really want to like throw their checks toward you, because there's nothing else out there that really speaks to them, just like you just said it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, but how about this? There's a couple of companies that I know of. They've been going around for a couple of years, but you know they're always kind of stuck at that level. You know, they're never going beyond.
Yep.
Could your relatives could you step in at that point and help them get to that next level?
Yeah, so we provide strategy. We also provide advice, given that my senior team has 30 companies under their belt with like probably 10, 15 exits. I have one exit of my own, and then one sort of exit with Square. I wasn't in it till the very end, but like it's just been really, really interesting to like be part of the outside, but also part of the inside, be able to dig into conversations, deep conversations with investors, because I'm friends with a bunch of them. And then also be able to like use my own critical assessment of what the market's doing and make interesting predictions and create theses on what's going to happen next, and then look for those companies that are doing it. Like telemedicine, I was involved with, what was that, 7 years ago? And I was having a lot of trouble trying to get investors to look at this company. They recently exited and they've done very, very well. And Ryan is an incredible CEO. If the rest of the world doesn't see what you're seeing, like find justification for why that's the case and stick with it, because all you have are your principles at the end of the day.
Good advice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those were the highlights of the questions that I had. Are there any other kind of tidbits or thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, like lead with distinction. Lead knowing that your way is something that should be paid attention to. Go start something and don't be dissuaded by the fact that you're having trouble. Airbnb pitched to 140 plus people before they were able to get their first check. If you take that and you just consider that like these people they had the legacy, they had the pedigree, they already had the network, and they had trouble. Yeah, like disruption is hard, and to get disruption into the marketplace, it's going to take a lot of conversations.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, thanks for joining us today. It was really awesome to have you. So
Yeah, thank you
thanks
very
again,
much.
Anthony. All
Yeah,
right.
cool.